My name is Ethel Suarez. I am from Uruguay, South America. As a political refugee in 1977, I came to Canada, not because I wanted to come to Canada. I never planned to come to Canada, but in my country in 1972, there were political problems. Enrique, my husband, and I were teachers. We had our own private school. We were against the government. It was very dangerous to be a teacher and to be against the government. My husband and I, we joined a political party that was against the government. This new party mainly consisted of high middle-class teachers, lawyers, doctors, professionals, business owners. To have a difference of opinion and to express these opinions was very dangerous at the time. In 1974, they put my husband in jail. His captors, the military, released him by mistake. Once he was home, we decided to go on holidays for a few days because my husband had a nervous breakdown. Once we returned home, we were told that the military had been at our home looking for my husband, and this time for me as well. The military threatened to kill the maid, so she was to alert us they were looking for us. When we arrived at the house, well, everything looked normal. We were having lunch with my sister, and she came in and she told us that we needed to leave right away since the military was after us. Well, in less than 3 hours, we had to write up a power of attorney to leave all our possessions and business. We sent our children up north to where my mum lived. It is a lot easier to escape without the children, especially when we did not know that we might be captured or killed. We send the children with my mum right after they pack, and a few hours later we followed them traveling north. We could not go to the airport since our names had already been circulated to the authorities. So we could not fly out. Next morning, we saw our children one last time. It would be 6 months before we could be reunited again. So we crossed the border on the north of Uruguay to Argentina. We stayed with friends who lived in Concordia, Argentina. After we got our documents, we fled to Buenos Aires. Further south, it is a big city and easier to hide in Buenos Aires. We started the immigration process to be able to stay in the country. In the meantime, we rented a house and we had to find jobs. After 6 months of being in Buenos Aires, we reunited with our children. My mom was the one who smuggled them out into Uruguay from Argentina. We lived there for 3 years in terror in Argentina. We were not able to find jobs without jeopardizing ourselves. So we set up our own business, carpentry shop, and also made handbags. 6 months after we arrived in Argentina, the government was overthrown and it became a military dictatorship. We found ourselves having to hide all the time as military from Uruguay and Argentina started to work together, and they were deporting people who had been hiding in Argentina back to Uruguay. It became extremely dangerous. At that point in Argentina, there were several groups helping political refugees. We asked for assistance to the United Nations as political refugees. In September, after we got our documents, we were able to consider 3 countries: Sweden, Austria, and Canada. One of the councillors said, well, given the way you are, the best country for you is Canada. Well, we came to Canada. The Canadian embassy sent us to Red Deer. We flew to Canada with the Red Cross passports. After we were there in Canada for 24 hours, the Red Cross passports were no longer valid. When we came to Canada, we didn't speak the language. A family with 3 young children, there was no help for refugees. There we were, people there were earlier refugees from Chile, Uruguay. The immigration here told them that we were coming and they were to welcome us. We stayed overnight in Calgary and the next day arrived by bus in Red Deer. There was no care, the Central Alberta Refugee effort or anything like that to help us. We came one day, the next day they sent us to work. We didn't speak the language. There was also several people here from Chile, and they were in the same situation. So we organized ourselves. We said, we have to learn the language. With my little bit of English, I went to Red Deer College. I made myself understood to what I needed. And the Department of English, they sent a second language in Red Deer College, organized English courses for us. You can't find a job if you don't speak the language. Well, we found a small job. My husband had some knowledge of carpentry. Working with my husband as a Canadian teacher, one day this fellow said, what do you think if we start the same thing we are doing, but for ourselves? We have our own business. My husband said, what is there to lose? We started the carpentry business with that teacher. The partner quit the business, and my husband and I continued. My husband passed in 1985. I continued the business till 1990. The process to come to a new country, to settle, to be in a new country, to learn everything in a new country was not easy. Even the weather, to deal with the snow, to plug the car, that was different in our country. We don't have snow. We don't plug the car. Looked like we were on another planet. After 3 years in 1980, we became a Canadian citizens. And the feeling to become a Canadian citizen was, well, some people don't feel it. But I felt we belonged to a place. And you are a somebody. Without papers, you are a nobody. And Canada gave us the opportunity to be somebody, to recognize that you are a human being. All the immigrants who came here, we need to consider the difference between immigrant and a refugee. The immigrants decide, yes, I'm ready to go to another country, I need documents. Then more or less they are economically ready to buy land or a business, but refugees don't know from one day to the next. Like a big hand takes a tree and picks you up and puts you in another country. When I was in Argentina, although I spoke the language, I was nobody. I didn't have documents, nothing. I remember arriving in Argentina, we found a hotel, and my husband said, let's go for a walk around the neighborhood. And we sat on a bench, and he said, do you realize we are nobody here? I said, yes. We don't have documents that are valid here. You don't have the chance to go back. My children were across the river. They were worried we were alive. Would we ever see them again? Sometimes we'd send candies with people who were going back to Uruguay. And Fabio, our youngest, he said, when they told me these were from Mom and Dad, I didn't believe them. I thought you were dead. Gone. In Canada, we settled. We knew this would be home. Most people come to Canada with the idea that when the system has changed, they will go back. But the children, they grow up, they go to school and settle here. You can't go back and forth. When you go back, you change. People change. Ideas change. But here in Canada, here is my house, my children, my grandchildren.